What's up, guys? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And today I am coming at you one day after the primary election here in Pennsylvania. We have a number of races that we are going to be talking about, spanning from local here in Bucks County to Philadelphia, all the way out to Allegheny County. And maybe we'll take a few stops on the way in between there. We will be talking about some vital races, particularly here in Bucks County. I'm going to give you a lot of the insight to the local races that we have, as well as what that might tell us about the general election where we do have statewide elections. Then at the end of the show, or towards the end of the show, I will be talking about Rudy Giuliani, aka America's mayor, being sued civilly regarding inappropriate behavior, which I don't know that any of us are particularly blown away or shocked by, but the allegations are really bad. And the potential allegation of Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, selling pardons, which, of course, is testing our Constitution once again, potentially, which the Trump administration really loved to do. But with that said, let's dive right into the thick of it. And this may be a shorter show. I am pretty tired after the long day. So I'll start off with giving you kind of what happened yesterday, and we'll start in Philadelphia. So, for those of us that don't live in Philadelphia, this mayor's race was something that kind of ran under the radar for a lot of people, unless you were literally trying to go out and look for it, because national media for some reason doesn't seem to get as engaged and involved with the city of Philadelphia, even though I believe it is the third largest city in the country, if I'm not mistaken. So this mayor's race was extremely vital to the direction of our, our state for Pennsylvania, but for the country. It laid out what is the future looking like. Mayor Kinney, who is the current mayor, we actually covered him on one of our first episodes. He kind of just threw his hands up with the issue of guns and gun violence. Now, we had the opportunity in my grad school class to meet the folks that were developing the roadmap for gun violence and all this stuff, critique it, whatever, right? But this was something that was attached with the mayor, who, remember, literally said, I don't want to be mayor anymore. So with this race, we had the opportunity of electing a bold leader, somebody that would be standing up for the city, somebody that would be the face of the city, somebody that's not going to run away when there is a crisis. And I actually found it very interesting to watch as an outsider. I mean, I live an hour outside of Philadelphia. I go to school in Philadelphia, so there are connections there, but I don't have any, direct impact on this election. So my classmates and I one day were getting lunch and we were discussing, okay, well, who do you like and who do you like? And some of them were between the three top women. Everybody was between the three top women that ended up winning or being 1, 2, and 3 in this race. Now, some folks were Rebecca Reinhart first. Some people like me thought, oh, Helen Gim's going to be number 1. And then a few folks like State Representative Anthony Bellman, who is a classmate of mine, and Congressman Brendan Boyle endorsed Sherelle Parker, who, as many of you may already know, ended up becoming the Democratic nominee. Now, remember that Philadelphia is overwhelmingly Democratic. So when we look at these numbers, we are not exactly we're not exactly, I don't even know, let's see if we can, I don't know if David Owie would even be listed on here because he's the Republican. So here you go. So, but it doesn't even say how many votes he's gotten total there on New York Times. But so David O, he's going to be the Republican nominee. He is a Republican on the Philadelphia City Council. He's the only Republican on the Philadelphia City Council because I believe he's the only one, because the way that they have rules in Philadelphia is similar to what we have here in Bucks County on the county commissioners, is that they have to have, I believe, 1 or 2 minority party representatives. Now, which I find really cool, Kendra Brooks was a Working Families Party nominee who became city councilwoman. So we actually have a more progressive person than a Republican in that seat. A more progressive person than a Democrat, really, but even including, that's very interesting. So what you see here is that you have Sherelle Parker, who is a former city council member. She is, I believe, also a former state rep. I know, like I talked about with Representative Bellman, he lived in her ward at the time when she was a city councilwoman. And that's the type of thing I think that, well, I'm going to loop back to it, but that's the type of thing I think that if we are looking at, well, how does this apply to us? What does this mean more broadly? That's the one key takeaway we should look at when we want to be progressive leaders in our local municipalities. But I'll loop back to that in a second. Rebecca Reinhart was the city, I believe she was a former city controller, and she, from what I could tell, was kind of the favorite for a very long time. I know a lot of my classmates really liked her and were pushing for her. My professor was not so hot on her. He was a supporter of Helen Gim, who was a city councilwoman as well. And she was endorsed by Bernie Sanders and AOC and the Working Families Party as well. Um, Now this is it's complicated because she seemed to be the most progressive candidate. But when we look at the differences between these three women, they are not astronomical. So as an outsider, I viewed it as, well, let's see how this plays out. What matters and what doesn't matter so much? What is the factors that will sway an election in Philadelphia, and what are kind of overlooked? Now, there's a number of different things, but I do believe that Sherelle Parker would be the first African American woman to be mayor, given that she actually wins in November, which, like I said earlier, is extremely likely. Helen would have been the first Asian woman to be mayor. So there are a lot of like firsts in this top three here, and they represent a good, what is that, 22, 40, let's just say 44. I mean, you're looking at 37% of the vote right here. I mean, I'm sorry, 77% of the vote right here. That's some great math. And you have all these other candidates down here. And I do find it interesting, I'll say, that following a election day, today we actually had Frank Ferry, who is a state senator from the southern parts of Bucks County. He pushed for ranked choice voting. Now, it actually didn't happen to be with in regards to the Philadelphia mayor's race, but it does. You do question, well, 32%. I mean, that 33%. That's not that large. I mean, it's not even a majority, right? It's a plurality, but well, maybe if we had ranked choice voting, we could get it down, and maybe the things change. Maybe they don't. Maybe Sherelle Parker comes out with 60%. But it would be interesting to see, and I did see people pushing back against it because of what is happening out in Allegheny County, which is interesting as well, which I will talk about here in a second. So here we have this, and as I see questions in the chat, I wanted to lead into some of this stuff from non-Bucks County stuff, because I know that that's where we're going to keep most of our discussions tonight. So I'm starting off with the Pennsylvania results that weren't hyper local. But this one's a big one too. This is State Representative Sarah Innamorato in Allegheny County, who won the county executive race. And here you see Summer Lee, who's the congresswoman from Allegheny County. This is a big win. Sarah was a big victory in the state representative race out there, and we're continuing to put progressives into good spots here. And we're just moving. I would say that Pennsylvania is becoming an incubator for real progressive leaders. Now, I wish that every part of the state would start doing that, and we can talk about that. We will be talking about that probably in about 2 minutes. But Allegheny County and Philadelphia both are presenting the broader state with a much brighter future, where they're coming up with stars basically of the Democratic Party. I mean, Summer Lee is an absolute legend, I would say, at this point, beating Steve Irwin in that primary. And Sarah is going to be a county executive, which is functionally like the county commissioner. So we will now, for those who are here for Bucks County, we will take the dive into it. So if you have questions about Bucks County elections, please throw them into the comment section of this video or the live chat, and I will dive into them. But here is our unofficial results here in Bucks County. So I'm going to take you top line first. And this is a number that should probably concern us all. I will tamper down any, expectations that this is an absurdly low number. But I just want to point out that when we look at the actual turnout in elections like this, you can see that turnout about 26% in a primary election in a municipal cycle, so in a odd year municipal cycle, 26 is about in the range of is what we're going to get. 20 to 30%, like 30% would be good. Like when I'm counting the votes, and for those who don't know, I go to the polls and I get a watcher certificate, and a watcher certificate lets you go in and watch them count the votes, right? Or you can go and talk to the judge of elections. And throughout the day, you get all these things saying, okay, well, how many people are turning out? How many mail-in ballots did you request in this thing, right? And in this precinct. And from there, it builds and builds and builds. You can kind of build the okay, well, I represent 14 as the chair. I represent 14 different precincts. What's the turnout? Okay, it looks about 20% here, 30% here. So 26% is about as good of an average we can get. It should be concerning that 26, like I just said, where 30-something% of the vote is electing a mayor functionally, 26% of eligible voters are deciding these vital races in Bucks County, which again, I will emphasize for those who don't live in Bucks County is the swing county in the swing state that will be most vital, if you ask me, and if you ask almost every election expert, and the election experts that are at Penn, that work with NBC, that work with MSNBC, and they work with all the projections, Pennsylvania is the most vital state for 2024 for Joe Biden's reelection. I'm putting my money on it right now. So if Biden carries Pennsylvania, he'll probably carry Wisconsin, he'll probably carry Arizona, and he might carry Georgia, and we might have a second term. And that's the stuff that we have to look out for. But 26% is not horrible for precedent, but it is not good for our democracy at large. Okay. So, let's see what we got in chat here first. Can you talk about all the goofing going on with cross-registering in the primary elections? Yes, I will talk about that when we get to school board. Stephen Mass, Republican candidate, for school board. Yep, I will talk about that. Let's see. Yep. Okay, cool. I'm all good. Just great chatter in the chat. I love to see it. I had to catch up there for a second. So we have in Bucks County, like I said, that vital swing vote. But in November, we will have, and I'm going to streamline these. I'm going to go through the top lines of the ballots quick. Make it quick. So just so we all know, okay, the Justice of the Supreme Court is up for election. So there are multiple justices of the Supreme Court. Daniel McCaffrey is the endorsed Democratic candidate, and he won handedly, and he won the nomination. But this race on the Republican side, Carolyn Carluccio is the Republican candidate. And, she's the Republican that is moderate. And Patricia McCullough, which I actually want to see if they've called this race. So give me 1 sec. I want to see if they called this race because I actually don't know. for the Republican side. I'll show you guys what I'm looking at while I'm looking at it. I'll read it. The Republican primary for the open seat pitted Carluccio, a Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas judge, against Patricia McCullough, a Commonwealth Court judge, and here we go, who ran unsuccessfully for a Supreme Court seat in 2021. Carluccio worked as an assistant U.S. attorney in Delaware, then as chief defender of Montgomery County. So, does it say she won? I don't see where. So, okay. It looks like, unless I'm missing it, Carluccio may have won. But just so we're aware, Patricia McCullough is an election denier. So the fact, and like, I want to see, I really want to see if this is posted anywhere for the state Republican. Okay, so they did call it, but this was not like a blowout race. Carluccio won with 53.6% versus 46.4%. Like, when I say she did not want to count the election. Like, they wanted to overturn the 2020 election. This is the type of people that are still running. And the Mastriano wing of the party, in Bucks County is not that strong, although it's growing stronger. And seems at the most local level, they're very active. But they don't have control of these races, which is, thankfully, pretty good. Because I'm sure that the state party has their choices, right? So we'll go from there. But that's the most interesting of these court seats. But remember, in November, you need to vote for these positions. When we talk about judges and we talk about justices at the highest level in the Supreme Court, these are where people get picked from these for those roles. These appellate court judges are the ones that build their career. They're lawyers. Well, most of them. By the way, you don't have to be a lawyer to become a judge in Pennsylvania. But these are the people that eventually move up those ranks. And frankly, if like a law, let's just say Josh Shapiro somehow gets vanished and we get Mastriano installed by Donald Trump and the Republicans pass a 6-week abortion ban. Let's just say that's not going to happen. Luckily, we have Josh Shapiro, and luckily, we still hold a majority in the state house. But let's just say it happened, and they passed this. The Supreme Court of the state of Pennsylvania would be the one that makes the ultimate call before getting it kicked up to the federal U.S. Supreme Court. So these are important races to win, and the fact that we elect judges is interesting. So here we have the judge of the Superior Court, Tamika Lane, who ran in 2021 unsuccessfully for the Superior Court, but she is a judge on a lower level. She gets the nomination with Jill Beck. This is one where you can vote for two. Now, I will emphasize this a number of times as well, but in many races, in your local elections, you can vote for more than one. So make sure that you read your ballot. When it says vote for two, where it'll say vote for no more than two. So that's tricky, stupid language to say vote for two. Here's the Republicans. Not that big of a deal. Here we have, and this was an unendorsed vote. Matt Wolf, a Democrat from Philadelphia, and Brian Neff, I forget exactly where he's from, but he was in Bucks County a lot this year. I don't know how this panned out statewide, but Matt Wolf had a lot of endorsements from, including Sharif Street, who is the chairman of the PA Dems and the state senator from Philadelphia. So a big endorsement, for sure. A frustrating race here in Bucks County was the judge of the Court of Common Pleas, which in 2019 we actually won 2 of those seats. We lost the 1 seat in 2021 where Tiffany Thomas Smith ran, and she's a former guest of the show. But Carissa Liller and Jordan Yeager both won in 2019, which started to alleviate issues that we had seen that were swaying towards the Republicans. The Court of Common Pleas is mostly handling local issues such as family issues, so divorces, all that, separations, all this different stuff that happens on the local level, and that's why we wanted to elect people like Tiffany Thomas Smith. But for some reason, this year, we didn't have a candidate. And, of course, on the Republican side is the current district attorney, Matt Weintraub. And Matt Weintraub winning this seat will mean that next year we will have a district attorney race, which I am not thrilled about because that means primary time. So, we'll see how that all pans out, and we will cross that road when we get there. So now we're going to get into a little bit more of the legislative angle of things. Bucks County Commissioner. So, like I said earlier, the Bucks County Commissioners have a 2-to-1 majority always. Whether it's Democrats and to Republicans or Republicans to Democrats, there's always one in the minority party that is on the Commissioner's board. Diane Marseglia coming up with the most votes out of any of the commissioners with 51,000. She gets 54% of the Democratic vote. But remember, you can vote for 2. So this 54% is really actually not. It's really like 96% or whatever it is. And Bob Harvey getting 43,000. There is a big drop off here. Diane has been in there for a long time. These are the types of things that worry me when you see a drop off like this. It is normal, but it is something that when you have close elections, you want to see this gap between your first candidate listed on the ballot and your second candidate listed on the ballot be within at least 1%. I think that's about the goal. When I look at other races, I would say especially on the most hyper local level, which we'll talk about some of those, but you want to get within about 1%. And sometimes that could be 100 votes. Sometimes it could be a little bit less. But you want to be within that range. So this is something that we have to narrow. But even if Bob, because also important to note, because Diane has the most votes, she will be the top name. So that's how this will end up. So that is why it's important. So when we have it like this, it has to be our goal to say, hey, if you vote for Diane, you should vote for Bob. If you want to vote for Bob, you should vote for Diane, because this is how we win the majority. In theory, the person that comes in third is still okay, but we want to get the top 2 vote getters. No matter what, you want to become the top 2 vote getters. Interestingly enough, we have incumbent Gene D. Wow, this is a hard name to say. Gene DiGirolamo. He's from the lower end of the county. He was a former state rep, getting 30,000 votes. Andy Warren, who was challenging him, got 14,000 votes. And Pamela Van Blunk, who is the county controller, actually outperformed the incumbent Gene DiGirolamo by 3,000 votes. So this is an interesting race to watch to see if Pamela Van Blunk beats Gene DiGirolamo. So, hopefully we have our 2 county commissioners in there, but then it would move Gene out, which is interesting because Gene was the, most moderate out of all of the candidates, I would probably say, in 2021 for running for commissioner on the Republican side. Then we have Register of Wills, county treasurer, clerk of courts, and coroner. So all of these ones up here were uncontested on the Democratic side. And the coroner race, I'll briefly talk about here in a second. The coroner race was won by Patty Campy, and Meredith Buck is the incumbent. And you can see this is a reasonably close race. It's not, we have to remember that these percentages are not like presidential races where like a 4% win is like a blowout. This is a big margin of victory, but it is safe to say, like, well, if you extrapolate it over millions and millions of votes, it's going to be gigantic. But this was a really contested race, and the party endorsed Patty Campy after some stuff that went on between the commissioners and coroners and all this stuff. And just to say, the Democratic Party united around somebody that was bringing party unity, and that's what they wanted. That's what the people wanted. That's what the party wanted. So that's where that vote comes from. She got the endorsement, and the endorsement obviously brings a lot of weight with it. So when we talk about theories of winning elections, I had a theory in which that says you have the first ballot position, even if you're an incumbent, if you have the second ballot position, even if you're an incumbent, you're in worse shape than the person even if they're not an incumbent, because there's the drop off, right? I was actually somewhat proven wrong in this election on the most local level here in Doylestown. But what this shows you in this race is that if you do not get the endorsement, it is extremely hard, especially in places like Bucks County, maybe not so much in places where you can get hyper active local people knocking doors and getting them to vote. But in a race like this in Bucks County, where we're spread out a little bit more, the endorsement really carries weight. So now I have to filter this so that we can get all the way, so we don't have to scroll all the way down there. So give me 1 second while we look at these races. And we're going to obviously go to the wonderful. We never talk about this, actually. We never talk about this area of our politics. The Central Bucks School Board. It is never a topic on this show because we have such sane politics on the school board. So, as you see here, we're going to have 5 different regions up for election. I actually, while I'm doing this, I'm gonna talk to you, and I'm gonna pull up something really quick because, frankly, it'll be better than my quick math. Okay, here we go. All right, as CB said in the chat, he goes, "Why was Stephen Mass the first name on the Democratic side, even though he was a Republican?" Well, as we talked about a little bit last week, I know maybe he's always in chat, but he might have been distracted. I don't know what he was doing. But for those who missed last week, for school board and for certain races, you are allowed to cross-file. So even if somebody is a Democrat, they will appear on the Republican side. So you'll see here, the top in the blue is the Democratic ballot side. In the red is the Republican ballot vote. So, in this district here, you see Stephen Mass, who is the Republican, but on the Democratic side, getting 9.64% of the vote. So, Karen Smith, who is the incumbent from Region 1, got 90.36% of the vote, the Democratic side. Now, we flip it. We go to the Republican side. Stephen Mass with 1,305 votes. Karen Smith getting 251 votes, 16% of the vote. Well, what that equates to is, and I will show you here, is Karen Smith getting 1,770 votes. I know it might be hard for some of you to see. To Stephen Mass's 1,467 votes. So when you combine the numbers, Karen comes out on top. That is a good sign. I'll give you my full analysis here once we look at all of them. I believe Karen had the lowest actually crossover. And even with it, she still has a good percentage of that Republican vote. That's a good sign. Heather Reynolds in Region 2 in Buckingham going against, I know Shaz's favorite, Dana Hunter, the star of the school board meetings. Heather got 1,377 votes, meaning 93.55% of the vote to Dana Hunter's 95. But when we flip it and we go to the Republican side, we see that Heather Reynolds picks up 21.66% of the Republican vote. So yes, the incumbent Republican is going to be the Republican nominee. But in a primary election, if you see that 21.66% of Republicans voted for the challenger Democrat, that should be telling you something. Now let's look at the numbers. In total, Heather Reynolds gets 1,706 votes to Dana Hunter's 1,280 votes. A near 500 vote margin between the two. That is huge. And I will go, so the question in chat, what explains the Republicans going to Karen Smith? I will talk to you about that when we look at all of them combined, because this is really good sign for us. If you care about democracy, if you care about free speech, if you care about the schools, if you care about all that stuff, you care about LGBTQ plus rights issues, you care about parents, you care about kids in schools, you care about teachers, this is a very good sign. But I'm going to talk to you about why this happened after we look at all of them. Because guess what? This is an interesting one too. Region 3, Dana Foley is the endorsed Democratic candidate. You have Patricia Carmen, who was a self-proclaimed moderate Republican. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. And then there's the actual Republican candidate that is endorsed by the Martino Foundation. And I'm saying that, of course, tongue-in-cheek, because I don't know what the hell Paul Martino's actual functioning PAC is called. It's just, well, I'm sure everyone in chat will be able to identify it, but Martino Inc., this is his candidate, getting 81 votes. So he got less than the non-endorsed Republican on the Democratic side. So that tells you something, because even then on the Republican side, Dana Foley coming out with more votes than the other Republican, Patricia Carmen, getting 19.88% of the Republican vote, 335 votes of the Republican side. That is a definitely not insignificant amount of votes. So when we go to the tail of the tape, we have Dana Foley, 1,988 votes to Glenn Schlofel's 1,314. Over 600 votes in favor of the Democratic nominee. This is big, okay? But just you wait, because when we go to my jurisdiction, when we come over to where me and people like Steve Sullivan and without a doubt the candidates themselves, we'll start with Rick Herring, who has turned out to be an absolute beast of a candidate, and I promise you we will have him on the show, pulling up with 95.75% of the vote. Trust me, I see you in chat, Jordan. I am not saying that we are super safe. We will get there. Let me finish, and we will get there. But I'm just hyping it up because we should feel good about this. We should feel excited about this. I have never felt good about an election day after the day after, besides today, basically. Today is the most excited I've felt about the results of specifically a primary election, because this is saying that we have a shot. Does not mean that we have it locked down, but it means that we have a chance. I will never say that we have easy wins. You'll never see me say that. But Rick Herring going against the wife of Paul Martino, which I don't mean to boil her down to that, but frankly, I'm sorry. That's what people are looking at. And this is an absolute drudging. 1,893 votes to 82 votes. And on the Republican side, Rick Herring, the Democratic candidate, got 481 votes to Artie's, that's how you say her name. Artie's 970 votes. He got 33% of the Republican vote. This is extremely good. This is extremely good. When we go to the total amount of votes here, Rick Herring, the Democratic candidate, 2,374. Artie Martino, the Republican, the extremist Republican, 1,052. That is a 1,300 vote margin in favor of Rick Herring. Remember, we are running people that are talking about sanity, bringing back moderation, frankly. They're not talking about being the most extreme leftist, Marxist, blah, blah, blah. No, we want to restore sanity to our school boards because our schools were great before the pride flag bans, before the book bans, before firing teachers for supporting our trans youth, before all this stuff. And we're going to fix the problems that we had before the $1 million lawsuit that was spent on some BS investigation. Last but not least, the biggest drudging of them all. We have Susan Gibson, who is a lawyer here in Doylestown, against Tony Arjona, getting Susan 2,299 votes on the Democratic side to Tony's 99. She got 2,200 more votes on the Democratic side, which of course, okay, Connor, you're just hyping it up. Susan also getting into the 30% range, 31.51% of the Republican ballot goes for Susan. When we look at the total numbers, 2,662 votes for Susan Gibson to 878. 2,662 to 878. An absolute great sign for us if you care about these issues on the school board. Now, let me address what Jordan is bringing up in chat. We can look at these numbers and we can get complacent. We can say, well, look, we did it. This is it. We're good. We're going to cruise and we're going to win, and these are great numbers. We could say that. We could. But the thing is if I tell you that I go to the back, we'll go back, right? When we go to, let's use the register of wills, okay? When we go to this comparison, we have a county-wide surplus of Democrats compared to Republicans. Roughly 12,000 of them throughout the county more Democrats voted than Republicans. I don't know that I have an explanation for what seems to be a rather low Republican turnout. I have to say that if having a contested commissioner's race on the Republican side does not turn people out, I don't know what that means for turnout in November. I do think that a lot of Democrats are turning out, and this kind of goes back to what CB was asking in the chat. The Democrats, because remember, independents cannot vote in primaries. That's something that we also have to remember. But Democrats are angry about what is going on throughout the county, and they're not blaming Biden. They're mad because they see the extremists that are taking over your local school boards and they're taking over your local municipal boards. They see the people coming with these MAGA hats and all the pins and all this stuff going to school boards and going to commissioners' meetings and going to local municipal meetings and harassing people, harassing their staffs, etc. If, and this is a big if we can keep the turnout in this, with this, difference, the delta between the Democrats and the Republicans here, we keep this gap similar, because remember, 26% is in a primary. If we got to like 40% turnout, which is about, that'd be probably pretty good for a municipal race, 40 to 45%. But we kept this gap, we would be in very good shape. Based on the swing, and I'm talking specifically now about the school board, but based on the amount of folks that said, you know what, we're rejecting extremism, we're choosing to bring our schools, we want our schools to be like what they were when our kids were there, or like when I was there. We had great schools. My parents moved us here because that's why we wanted to move here to go to those schools. This county is the epicenter of the extremists coming for school boards. So if this tells us anything, it says that the messaging that the Democrats are putting out is working. And the message has to be between now and November that you watching this, maybe you listening to this, you live in the area, if you live in Central Bucks, or you don't, find a way to get involved. Even if you don't live here, if you live outside of Bucks County, you might live across the state. Or you might live across the country. But this extremism doesn't stop here. This is a testing ground. This is their incubator. The way that I said that Allegheny County is an incubator for progressive thought, Central Bucks is the incubator right now for the radical right wing. Central Bucks, Penn Ridge, Council Rock, we're at this epicenter of a far-right movement. So if we want to win these races, and we need to win at least four, I would love to see us win all 5. We need to win at least 4 of these school board races to flip this control of the board. We have to convince reasonable Republicans, which, yes, reasonable Republican voters still exist. They're elected officials. Not so much. But reasonable Republican voters, the fiscal conservatives, that they actually they're not just saying that they're socially liberal. They do exist out there. Obviously, they're not all of them, but they do exist. We can pick those people up and say, you know what, you're welcome on our side. We'll disagree about tax policy, but look, we care about our kids. That's going to win those races, and if we win the school board races, we will win the commissioner's race, and if we win the commissioner's race, we will probably look pretty good across the state. I believe that with my whole heart, but we have to, and this is, if you are for some reason a strategist for the Democratic Party and you don't listen to me normally, but you are listening to this show right now, we have to target some Republicans and we have to target independents. and we have to make sure that we turn out our Democratic voters. There are more people that believe in the progressive ideas and the progressive way of life than there are that believe in this radical nonsense that they're perpetuating on the school boards across the county. But yes, we have comments in there. Voters spoke yesterday. Extremism and wasteful spending, yes, doesn't belong in our schools. Everyone's tired of it. Absolutely. People hate a Trump supporter who doubles down on being friends with a homophobic woman and is friends with the lawyer the district spent $1 million on. Yes. Yeah, people won't hear the stuff about Tony. We will see about that as things get closer to November. Obviously, I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but we are looking pretty good in that district, at least. We can at least say that. That's one that I do feel pretty comfortable with. But we just see I think it could also mean the majority of ours do not support these extremists. They don't want to identify with these candidates. I think it's the extremism of the board in general, not that it's the individuals. I don't think that the average voter actually knows their local school board rep, but they know that the school board in totality from the Republican side is going off the rails. So some people, like the hyper involved, I mean, if you're watching this show, you probably do know who your state rep is. You probably do know who your, township supervisor or borough council or mayor or all that stuff is. But the average voter kind of learns about this stuff as they're going to the polls, because the average person doesn't have all the time in the world to dive into politics. It's not their niche, right? Like it is, if you're watching this, it probably is your niche on some level. But the average person goes and they look up, okay, I'm going to vote. What can I look at? All right, who can I ask? Who's a good candidate? Blah, 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 right? But they know that the school board, as Lindsay said, is wasting our money. And they know that they're essentially, my coworker was joking to me today. He's like, yeah, I thought book burning was out of style. And I was like, well, they don't have to burn them. They just have to remove them from the schools, and they can consistently suppress people's freedom of speech. And there was a few stories from yesterday at the polls that were interesting, but I'll emphasize again, if you want to make a difference, if you want to see that these people are nowhere near kids, that they're nowhere near our teachers, that they're nowhere near the power, they have no control over our tax dollars, you have to vote them out. You have to vote them out. Public comment is all great, fine and dandy, but you're not actually doing what needs to be done. It's great as a protest. It's great to get the opinion. It's great to move the needle. But a lot of people, mostly on the Republican side, I'll say, are going to school board meetings because it's their hobby. They have nothing better to do. We are all engaged because we want to see people protected, kids protected, teachers to get salaries that they deserve, the benefits that they deserve, the administrative staff, the janitorial staff, coaches, getting the funding that they needed. And we're also going to protect all kids, as Rick said so eloquently in his speech 2 weeks ago. All kids, not just some, not just the ones that are easy, not just the ones that are going to get the good grades. All kids, no matter what they're struggling with. I went to Central Bucks West. We had a whole wing dedicated to helping kids that were struggling, whether they had special needs or whatever. That is what we should be striving for. To be the school that is welcoming, that is going above and beyond. And I know that if we elect these Democrats to the school board, that they will push for that, not their craziness that the Republicans are saying. And yes, as Jordan said, if you're really rich, you can also donate. But look, if you can't donate, I'll say this: if you don't live in the district, donate. But if you do live in the area, the legitimate best thing you can do, screw donating. If you can look, I can't donate more than like $25 here, $25 there. But what you can do is offer your time. Going door knocking, volunteering at events, talking to your neighbors, hosting a house party. All this stuff is actually the most important thing. That's why you see Rick and Susan and Dana and Karen and Heather, all of them taking and chipping away at these Republican votes, because all they're doing is going and talking to their neighbors. They're going and talking to people. They're listening to them. That's what a good candidate does, and that's what a good campaign will do. But a good campaign is built with the support of good volunteers. So if you are able to, that's what you should do. Now, let's close here with a little bit of craziness, but fun craziness. Well, it's not fun because the allegations are absolutely atrocious, but it's only fun because we get to see the downfall of this ugly bastard, Rudy Giuliani, who is, as you can see in the headline, accused of being a, quote, rapist, racist, and really bad lawyer. So there's a whole lot of articles going on here, but I'll give you the highlights, and then I'll see if I can get some of the more crazy accusations. Now, I will say it up front, these are all allegations. They're not proven yet, but there is a civil lawsuit brought against Rudy Giuliani based on these accusations. So, we will find out, and I won't have to say allegedly at some point, if some of these accusations are true. So, Rudy Giuliani, for those who don't remember, was the mayor of New York City on 9/11. That's where he got a lot of his bona fides. He was a mayor that, if I'm being just generous, he is credited for taking out the mafia in New York City. But beyond that, he has since become Donald Trump's personal lawyer. You may remember, as he organized at the Four Seasons lawn care services, the attempted overturning of the election while his hair was leaking brown goo. You may have forgotten about him kind of since then. But he also appeared in the most recent movie, Borat, subsequent movie film, which came out on Amazon not too long ago. He, in that movie, was caught trying to have a affair with who, allegedly, he was allegedly caught trying to have an affair with somebody that he knew. The actress wasn't actually a minor, but who he had thought was a minor and was going to do all this stuff. And he caught him on camera trying to whip out his you-know-what and have sex with this girl. But of course, he played it off. I remember at the time, like all the clips came out, he played it off. No, I was just tucking in my shirt. I was tucking in my shirt, guys. Come on. It's nothing. He was just tucking in his shirt. But this gives you another level of like, wait a minute. He's really still doing all this stuff like at this time. So, Noelle Dunphy, who was somebody that worked for Rudy Giuliani, that's also something that we should remember here. These are not like accusations from some random person. They are somebody that worked for her, and I can't get these ads to go away on the side. It's bothering me. But I'll read you some of the stuff from the accusations. We'll see. We'll start here. So it says, on June 25th, 2019, Giuliani insisted that Miss Dunphy stay in a guest suite in his Upper East Side. Remember, this is somebody that works for him. Upper East Side apartment. Since Giuliani was her boss and attorney, she felt pressured to do as he asked and ultimately agreed to stay in his guest suite temporarily. Upon arrival at Giuliani's apartment, Miss Dunphy was surprised to find out that Giuliani had alcoholic beverages ready for them. After finishing their drinks, Miss Dunphy went to the guest suite alone. When Miss Dunphy got out of the shower, she was startled to see that Giuliani had entered the guest suite Uninvited, she said she would meet him in the living room when she was ready, but Giuliani would not leave. He sat on the bed and pulled down his pants. So we'll continue down here. Another accusation, because you guys can read the whole thing, because I'm not going to read this whole article for you because it's very long, and there's a lot of stuff, but this is one too. He often, quote, he often demanded oral sex while he took phone calls on speakerphone, this is crazy, from high-profile clients and friends, including the then President Trump. Here we have another. When they were apart, they would often work remotely via video conference, and during these conferences, Giuliani almost always asked her to remove her clothes on camera. He often called from his bed, where he was visibly touching himself under a white sheet. On February 25th, Giuliani forced Miss Dunphy to have sexual intercourse with him for the first time. Before this, Miss Dunphy had refused and avoided having sex with Giuliani, although he had forced her to engage in other sexual contact. But on February 25th, Giuliani told Miss Dunphy that he would not wait any longer to have sex with her. She objected and told Giuliani repeatedly she did not want to have sex, but Giuliani would not take no for an answer. He eventually forced her into having sexual intercourse with him. She never consented to intercourse, but she eventually stopped resisting because it was clear that he would not stop pressuring her. These are the types of scumbags that we're dealing with. These are the types of people that Republicans like Donald Trump are putting in power. And these are the type of people that other Republicans, like we were talking about, the moderate Republican that is out there, need to realize are monsters, and they are empowering by voting for someone like Donald Trump. So either get better candidates, get somebody that's not going to do this, because remember that what we talked about with Trump last week, who is found civilly liable for the sexual abuse of E. Jean Carroll, and there's plenty of other cases since then, or not since then, but that have been going on, that we need to be taking seriously. Now, last thing on this is to say, all that is just on this sexual abuse and potential rape side of things. Beyond that, Miss Dunphy told people, I guess the reporters, and then it is part of, also I believe it should be part of a lawsuit, but I'm not sure. This is where it's going to disconnect from her. And apparently, Rudy Giuliani and Donald J. Trump, the failed former president, were selling presidential pardons for $2 million apiece. Which, by the way, let's remember that Trump is a self-proclaimed billionaire. And if he's selling them for $2 million, it's pretty cheap for the people that would probably be able to even consider doing that. So that is ridiculous. It is a bribe. It is clearly a bribe. And if they are proven to be accurate allegations, should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The problem is, and as I kind of alluded to, and Mickey saying he needs that money for his defense campaign. True, he probably does. But what I alluded to earlier, kind of when I was talking about it in the intro of the episode, it is not explicitly stated with regards to presidential pardoning power that the president cannot receive benefits for pardoning people. And that is the type of legal caveat that has allowed Donald Trump to avoid the prosecution and punishment that he has deserved for years and decades, not even just years, decades at this point. And it might be the way that he weasels out of other cases. But if this is true, we are going to have a constitutional question as to whether the president is allowed to sell pardons. Just think about that. $2 million. Well, what if the next president wants to sell it for $500? And everybody that commits crimes. Because these are the anti-crime people, right? These are the people that, oh, crime is so bad in New York City. I don't even want to live here anymore. I'm moving to Mar-a-Lago. But if it's their friends committing the crime, then they can just give me $2 million. We'll wipe that. We'll wipe that clean. We don't have any worries. That's the two-tier justice system boiled down. I haven't heard anyone say that about this yet, but that's how I feel about it. This is exactly the two-tier justice system that is ripping this country apart time and time again. Because those with money and those with power have influence within the spheres of influence that our judges are. This is also why it's good to also have judges elected. It's another good reason. And it's good to have not lifetime appointments to these positions, but a topic for another day, maybe. This exemplifies everything wrong. Not everything, but a lot of what is wrong with the judicial system. And the separation of powers here should start to be ringing alarm bells and say, well, Supreme Court, hey, doofuses on the Supreme Court. Sorry to be mean to the Supreme Court. You should probably prepare a case that should get streamlined straight to the top, because if this is real, this needs to be tried, and it needs to be tried ASAP. But with all of that being said, thank you guys all for watching. I hope this was a fun little dive into yesterday. If you enjoy the show, be sure to destroy, smash, mash, I don't know what else, other adjective I can use there, or a verb to use there. The subscribe button. You can hit that subscribe button to help support independent progressive media. You can hit the thumbs up if you like the show, because it helps us get pushed in the algorithm. If you're watching via a YouTube clip throughout the week, hit the thumbs up on those as well, because it helps us. Even if you just see it pop up, just throw a thumbs up and it helps us grow the channel. If you are listening on the Apple Podcast or the Spotify app, you can subscribe there, or anywhere you can get podcasts. You can follow the show on Instagram, on Facebook, and on TikTok at Greater Society Media. You can follow me on Twitter at Con O'Hanlon. You can support the show for as little as $3 a month at patreon.com/Greater Society Media. And last but not least, you, viewer, listener, can join in on the fun of the program, which the Discord server has been growing, and I love to see it. And there's going to continue to be even better conversations about local politics, politics in general, national issues, PA issues, international issues. Your work, if you are somebody that is looking to share it, you can throw it in, and we can, support other progressives that are doing the hard work that we want to see in our communities. But do it via Discord. The link is in the video, or the description of this video, and is in the description of the podcast if you are listening afterwards. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next week. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Peace.